Okay, so remember in the Krebs cycle, we don't directly create ATP, but those shuttles, FADH and NADH, remember they're hydrogen or electron carriers. So they're going to bring it to the electron transport chain, and we're going to talk about how ATP is created there. So don't let my beautiful picture intimidate you. It's really not too bad. So this happens within basically the cell wall of the mitochondria. So we've got an outer membrane, or outer compartment, an inner membrane, and then the inner compartment itself. So we're looking at the membrane of the mitochondria here, outer membrane, inner membrane, and then the kind of intermediate compartments here. So what happens is NADH and FADH, these are just molecules that are created in the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. So what they do is they're going to come to the electron transport chain and basically drop off their electrons. So what happens is those electrons are going to be passed from these membrane proteins from one to another. And what happens is when those are being passed, kind of think of it as like hot potato, it allows enough energy to pump hydrogens out up into this outer compartment. So sorry, now we're going to have a bunch of hydrogens up here. Okay. So just remember, it's a game of hot potato. As those electrons are being passed, we're having hydrogens be removed from the inner compartment into the outer compartment. So we've got a bunch of hydrogens being pumped up here now. H plus, sorry, I don't have like anything firm back here. So again, NADH and FADH, just molecules created in the Krebs cycle as we break down a glycogen molecule or break down our acetyl-CoA. They're going to come to the electron transport chain, which is in the mitochondrial membrane walls. They're going to drop off electrons. When those electrons are being hot potatoed back and forth down the line here, we're grabbing hydrogens that are just floating in this inner compartment, and we're pumping them into the outer compartment. Technically, this one doesn't pump hydrogen, so that's why I'm avoiding it. But we're going to be pumping those hydrogens as we pass that hot potato or the electrons. So then what happens is we have this specialized little guy. He's called an ATP synthase. So the ATP synthase is going to grab hydrogens, pump them through its special system, and as a result, it will create ATP. Whoa! So the electron transport chain is super important in creating ATP by basically using these shuttles and the electrons to pump hydrogens. We grab hydrogens, and using our ATP synthase, we're going to create ATP as we pull hydrogens from the outer compartment back into the inner compartment. So what happens to these electrons at this final little protein? The electrons basically get dumped off. Okay? So the electrons will combine and basically form a hydrogen. Okay? Oxygen will then combine with that hydrogen, and we're going to form H2O. So it's really important that we have oxygen present, and this is why oxygen is the ticket into the mitochondria or into the Super Bowl stadium, because without oxygen, we have no one to accept these last electrons, and then there's all sorts of issues in the cell. So oxygen is the final electron acceptor, and it will form with the hydrogen to create water, H2O, and we'll usually breathe that out. So that's the electron transport chain. Again, don't let all the drawing and details confuse you, okay? So remember, NADH and FADH created in the Krebs or citric acid cycle. They're going to be donating electrons. As those electrons are passed along the membrane, it's going to provide enough energy to pump hydrogens from the inner compartment to the outer compartment. We're going to grab a handful of hydrogens, pull it through the ATP synthase, and as a result, we're going to create ATP. Those electrons that were being hot potatoed are going to get dropped off. Oxygen is going to accept them, and we're going to form